Hi, how you doing today? I'm so excited to be here with you. My name is Steve Kidd. I am an international best-selling author of multiple books, but what I really love is the thousands of people that I've worked with to help develop and share their story with the world, and more importantly, the millions that those stories have helped, the people that they've reached. And with that, I'm here today to share with you from my heart some of the much bigger that's going on in my life and some of the things that I know that I'm called out to do. So hold on to your hats. I'm going to try to let you behind the curtain just a little bit. A lot of times, like the Wizard of Oz, where it's like, pay no attention to that man behind the curtain. Well, today I'm going to just throw back the curtain and reveal to you some of the things that I've been going through, some of the transitions that are happening in my life, exciting stuff, terrifying, like all good change is, and the things that I'm here to really put a flag in the ground and tell you a little bit about. So, just a little bit of background for those of you that don't know me fully. My name is Steve Kidd. I am a third generation minister. As I said, I'm an international best-selling author. I've been in sales since I was 5 years old. Literally, at 5 years old, I began starting selling. And I've been self employed my whole life. Now, there have been times when I've had to work other jobs because the self employment didn't cover it. And because I am a third generation minister, I will tell you from experience, just about every minister will tell you that the first thing you learn is how much other work and or even other jobs you're going to have to be able to afford to be a minister. And so throughout all of my life, sales and marketing has been what I've done. I was a sales manager by 19 for the Kirby Company, and worked on and off for them over the course of a lot of years. I even wrote the training manual that was used by the entirety of the company for a while for training their telemarketing staff. Lots of exciting things like that. And I've been kind of always on the cusp of things. I was an early adopter in internet space. In fact, when I first started out, we didn't have the word the internet. There were bulletin boards. They weren't all connected. You had to dial into each individual bulletin board specifically, and they were housed most of the time in somebody's house. Every once in a while, they were in smaller businesses, but it was a real ground roots, underground kind of thing. And you're talking about 2400 baud modems, sometimes even 1200 baud modems back in those days. Now, some of you are going, what the heck is a baud and what's a modem? To give you an idea, without going deeply into technology stuff, a fax machine, well, at least back in the day, they've upgraded them a little bit, but a fax machine essentially sends a signal at about 9600 baud. So when you're talking a 2400 baud modem, you're talking about something that's a little bit less than a quarter or right around 25% of the capability that a fax machine in the early to mid 90s had the capability to do. Okay. But back then I was on the cusp of that. And when this thing, the internet, when HTML got created and browsers, I remember when Internet Explorer came out, there wasn't, it was before Edge, it was before Microsoft even had many of the things. Most of that stuff came out right around the same times as Windows 3.0. There was no desktop software. And then very quickly after that, right around that same time, was when Norton, yeah, that's right, the company that now does internet security, they're the ones that actually originally invented the desktop for Windows, which Microsoft bought out, kind of. We won't go into that whole story, but so I remember all of those early kind of things, and I was an early adopter in that space. Having been a marketing company since 1988, officially, like I said, selling since I was 5, I have always been an early adopter. And back in those early days of the internet, I'll give you a quote from the early days of the internet. Bill Gates said, and this was actually before, right around the time the internet was being conceived. Bill Gates said, I can never imagine anyone ever needing a 40 megabyte. That's right, you heard me right. 40 megabyte hard drive. Okay. Now, for those of you that use Windows still, you know that the Windows operating system, before you put any of the other production software, any of that on top of it, the Windows operating system itself is about 200, 120, I don't know, 120 gigs or something like that, I think. You're not going to get a computer with anything less than about 100 and probably 250 gig hard drive. Most computers are being sold with at least 500 gigs and pretty much 1 terabyte in your hard drive space. Yeah, that's just where we are in the world today. But back then, Bill Gates said he can't even imagine the need for even 40 megabytes. Again, early adopter in computer space. And actually, when I was studying computer technology in high school, though we had a computer programming class, there wasn't really such a thing as a PC. Now, there were a little bit of TSR 80 computers, and Apple, the earlier version of Apple, had a few beginning computers that were headed towards the direction of PCs, but we didn't really have a whole lot of belief in the early 80s that we were going to have a personal computer, and we definitely weren't learning programming on that. Just I've been on that cutting edge, and there's been the old saying that explorers get killed and pioneers are the ones that settle the ground, and to some extent that can be true, but also it's the explorers, the adventurers, or as I like to call it, the wizards, the powerful ones who have the magic to be able to see into the future and say, this is the next thing that's coming. Some of you have probably heard of people like Gary Vaynerchuk who are predicting what's going to happen next. Of course, Elon Musk and the kind of things that he's done. You could talk about, Bill Gates, we talked about before, Steve Jobs, so many other names of people that you would think of when you think of innovations. And many of those people that I just mentioned, I remember either when they weren't or when their idea was something that a few of us were extremely excited about and the rest of the world thought it was crazy. Back in the early days of the internet, I remember the newspapers saying, this internet thing is never going to stick around, and there will never be a time when people want their news from anything but the newspapers that they've come to rely on and trust in. Now, let me ask you this. When was the last time you looked for information on something on Google? When was the last time you saw a New York Times, let alone read it, right? A lot of times these days, and I feel bad for the newspaper industry saying this, but a lot of times these days, newspapers are mostly used for packaging material. There are a few people that they love that tactile nature of the newspaper and getting it every day, but less and less are people getting their news in print, delivered by some young man dropped off at their door, or woman. It doesn't have to be. It's really not a gender specific or even age specific kind of thing. Those are just some of the kind of ideas, way back in those early days of the internet. I was talking to my friend Craig. I've mentioned Craig online before. And I was talking back then about the concept of $1 trillion internet company. In fact, actually, what I was saying was I want to be the first internet trillionaire. Now, Elon Musk, last I looked, he was at the top. He's worth about 220 to 250 billion dollars. That's about a quarter of $1 trillion is his net worth currently. And even way back in the 90s, I was looking at what would it be and what will it take for me to be a trillionaire. Now, this has shown up in a lot of ways in people's lives. It's often, I remember one day, Maya was riding in the car with us, and she was feeling down about something. And in my typical way, I said, yeah, but what if? And like I've done here online sometimes to you, I showed the silver lining in the cloud. And I showed her even that possibly the cloud wasn't a cloud, that it was really very delicious cotton candy that also had silver laced in it. So it was worth so much. And she was like, "You always do that, Dad." And I'm like, "Yeah, I know it's a curse, but you'll just have to learn to live with it and love me because that's the way my brain works." When you add on top of that the deeply sensitive and empathic nature and the spiritual nature that me as a third generation minister, somebody deeply in tune to God and listening to his voice and his leadings, I've always been the one to see the silver lining in people's clouds, to peer into their very soul and know that thing that is for them. Sometimes even being able to help them see something they didn't see. It's so easy in some respects that I didn't really see it as a gifting because I just saw it. Much the same as, when you tie your shoes, you probably don't think about, wow, tying your shoes is really a tough thing. I don't know how people do this. Now, when a little kid is learning to, they think that. But after you've done it a couple 100,000 times, you don't even think about it. You just put your foot there and you tie the shoe and boom, you're done, right? And that's kind of the way things have been. And so I've been on that cutting edge, been an early adopter in internet space, in marketing. Um, you know, it never went anywhere because I didn't have the financial backing, but I actually was writing software that was what became WordPress. Before WordPress and the people who wrote that, I was not part of that team, just so that we're clear on what I'm saying. But I was conceiving of it and had a small version of it that I had programmed that was in a closed system, meaning that you needed to have the login to the server and there was only like two people that were testing it with me. But it was the same base concept. Now WordPress has gone mountains beyond where we started, but the same basic concept of putting your thoughts down and being able to share it out wide with the world and actually create a website out of that. Um, just some cool ideas that my brain has had come to it. And I'm always in that space. And I love doing it for myself. I love more than that, though, casting the vision for people that I work with and helping them see themselves, especially when you don't see it yourself. To be able to see, oh my gosh, there's that possibility, there's that potential. That thing you just said is so much bigger than all the things that you were thinking or possibly even seeing. What does that all mean? I mean, it means that basically the third generation minister, the kid who spent his whole life in church, has talked in front of tens of thousands of people and sang in front of large audiences as a Christian, as a minister, as the lead singer in a Christian rock band, all of those kind of things. The salesperson, all of those coming together along with my deep level of empathy to put together some cool thing. And I'm in transition. Some of you can look up if you haven't seen it before, and you can see my cover on my Facebook page. I encourage you to comment. What do you see in that picture? What does the phrase, "Are you weathering the storm?" or "Are you the storm?" What does that say to you? It's a great litmus test for me to know what you're currently dealing with. And it just came from the empath that's in me. A lot of you know me because of all the books that I've worked on. Now I'm finished finalizing my 20th book. It's actually done. We just need to put it out. My 20th book and all the books before then, but more importantly, the thousands upon thousands of authors that I've helped discover, write, publish, market their books to bestseller. And more importantly, even than that, the millions that those books have reached. And you probably don't know who I am because I've been in the background. Yeah, maybe I've even been hiding. Maybe I didn't know what my space was. For sure, I didn't claim it. But those of you that know me know that what I do powerfully. And I know that industry really well. And I know that there's so much more. That there are things that God has for me to be able to advance and increase your life. And I'm putting the stake in the ground of that empire that I'm building. Because I don't just build an empire for myself. I'm not sitting here creating an empire and sitting on all my gold, as much as the dragon in me likes the thought of that, but rather I'm an empire creationist. I help you find, discover, and create the empire that has always been in you, that you were born to do. Why? Because of the people you were meant to serve. I remember one day, and I may have told this story before, but you probably haven't heard it. I was sitting in the back of a church that later on, became our home church. But at the time, we were just visitors. We had gone there maybe once or twice before, and they had a special. They had a guy that was a prophet, and they said, "This guy's a different kind of prophet than you've ever heard before. You really got to come and see him." So, coming from a very conservative background up until that point, I was very skeptical, little leery even of going. Since then I've been in a lot of charismatic and Pentecostal kind of churches, and those kind of things I see and know and understand them. But back then, there was even some thoughts in my mind of, is this stuff of God or is it of the devil, right? You're raised that way. And I was sitting in the back row, and I got to tell you, my skeptical brain was saying, well, sure, him and the pastor talked about, because all the people that he was prophesying, it was a really cool way he did it, because he would have 3 to 5 Bible verses that he would speak over the people and say, this Bible verse and this means that, and this is the kind of thing that I see for you in your life. And like I said, I was kind of thinking, well, the pastor gave him an update on the people, and so he kind of then prepared, and he's got a really cool knowledge of being able to recall Bible verses, but it's a little bit of a scam. That's what I was thinking. Remember, I'm sitting on the back row. Nobody there in the church knows me at all. None of them even knew my name. And he points to me and calls me out. And I was like, gulp. And he said 4 or 5 Bible verses. And he said, I see for you tens of thousands of people surrounding the throne because of what you will do in this world. The ministry and the message that you have is huge. You can't even fathom it at this point. But there are people in this world whose lives will be changed, and they will be around the throne of grace because of what you do. Blew me away. Oh my gosh. And I, ever since then, have tried, most of the time failed, to try to live up to that. Sometimes even hidden from it. But I'm here again today to share with you just the glimmer of an idea, just the transition that as I'm going through some training that I'm doing, and I'm releasing a bunch of stuff. And, I've shared with you some of the things about how free we really are when we're forgiven, and about being the storm, and about living the life, and about maximizing while it's called today. And I'm doing the same in my own life. I've been here on Facebook Live just being transparent and showing you my journey. And I'm here to share with you. There is so much more. And I know you. Your 60 or 70% outshines the 200% of everybody you know. And you get away with 60 or 70% of the time because you're doing more than anybody else can even conceive. And you don't have anybody that's a vision caster, anybody that's an early adopter, visionary empath that can show you anything bigger than what you're doing. And you're doing less, just like I did. I knew I was doing less, but I didn't know what to do about it. I wanted to do more, but I couldn't find a way. I found my way. Those doors, as they open up for me, and it really just came down to me busting out of that box and being willing to show up and to do a Facebook Live like this, regardless of the feedback, which I'm sure it'll all be positive. Because you're put on this planet to change the world. And I'm put on this planet to open you up to things that right now you have never even conceived of, but are going to be so huge, they will make the difference. I am the early adopter. I am leading the path. I am, if you will, the wizard firing off the flaming fire, the storm, the lightning bolts, clearing the path as we go out and we change the world. If that appeals to you, if you're excited about that, if you're ready, you're going to say, look, hey, This excites me. Send me, make a comment here. Send me a direct message. If you have my email or my phone number, text me, email me. And it's okay if you're not ready for that, if that's overwhelming, if you're like, wow, Steve, you lost your mind, any of those kind of things, that's fine too. But for that go-getter that knows there's more, but doesn't know what the more is. As Gandalf tells Frodo, a wizard is never early. A wizard is never late. A wizard arrives precisely on time. And I've shown up in your life precisely on time to be the siren to beckon to you. There's more. Come and get it. If you want to know more about what's going on with me, or you want to know more about what could go on with you, I look forward to looking at your messages. I hope you have a great rest of your day and a great week.